Hey, how's it going, Endless fans? It's Whiteboard Wednesday, and ding, ding, ding. Today we're talking about the difference between front versus rear projection. That's my amazing boxing glove voice that you could get from me. Obviously when it comes to events, projection is a big part of it. We want presentations and videos to be able to be seen, and this is probably a very, very common question because there are some slight difference between front and rear projection, and you might have stumbled upon it as you're planning your event. We did a Whiteboard Wednesday on how AV affects your event layout and vice versa. Go check that one out. I'm sure it's going to be linked down below and in the resources and all that sort of stuff. We talk a little bit about this, but we want to get a little bit more in depth so you can understand the difference between the two. So whenever you're looking at your AV quote, you might be able to see a front projection versus rear projection. You might also see something like F/R on the quote, meaning that the projection screen comes with two front projection and also a rear projection surface that can be exchanged on the screen. This is very, very common, so then that way if there's a change needed at the event, it can be done. However, always be sure to confirm whether you're doing front or rear projection with your AV company beforehand, because last thing you want to do is turns out the layout's all wrong. You were thinking rear projection, they were thinking front projection, and man, everything's all wrong and everything's all ruined. Don't want that to happen. So we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between the two so you can understand it. And then as always, as I seem to say every time with one of these videos, communicate with your AV company and let them know the difference of what you're wanting and what you're planning when it comes to your layout. So let's start with front projection. This is kind of the typical, everyone knows about it when it comes to a projection screen. Sometimes you also don't have a choice when it comes to projector, and you might only have front projection available. This is very common with those roll-up screens that pop up very, very quickly. They come in 8-foot, 10-foot sizes. They're only in front projection. The reason why is behind it there's a pole. Obviously you wouldn't be able to rear project because there would be a pole in the screen. So front projection, the benefits of this is that it is an opaque surface. What this means is that we're actually projecting from the front. There's no need for it to be translucent in any sort of way, so we want to make sure it looks as good as possible and reflects as much light as possible, so it's a nice, bright, white screen, 100% opaque. Usually the back of the surface as well as a dark gray. I'm not sure if that matters, but now you know. Fun facts of Whiteboard Wednesday. One interesting thing though to keep in mind is that because you are doing a front projection screen and all of the light is getting absorbed from the front, you sometimes don't need as bright of a projector. Again, this is very, very minute differences, but front projection screens are slightly brighter than a rear projection screen. We're going to hop over to rear projection so you can understand that concept. When you are doing a rear projection screen, you are projecting through a slightly translucent surface. So what that means is some of the light gets lost when it's passing through. Think of like a tinted window on a car. Not all the light goes through, and it gets slightly dimmed as it's going through. So whereas with a front projection screen, 100% it gets absorbed by the opaque white surface. So this might mean that you actually get a little bit brighter of a signal. Very, very minute. It's not going to make like a world of a difference. For example, if you have a 3,000 lumen projector, it's not going to all of a sudden look like a 10,000 lumen projector, but it might look a little bit brighter. So what's interesting though is that it's very important to understand how front projection affects your layout of your room and where your audience sits. Here's a nice little drawing we have here. Obviously the projector is in front, hence the word front projection, and it's projecting directly on the screen. What this might mean is there's two different ways that you can have the projector placed. For example, you can have it on, for example, a small little cart, or you can also have it rigged up into the ceiling. Most common and most cost-effective, obviously, is have it on the ground so you're not paying rigging fees and truss and all that sort of stuff, but you can also hang it from the ceiling as well. However, if you are placing it on the ground with an AV cart, then if you have people sitting in front of it, they could block the screen. So this is really important to know, because if you are, for example, have a very tight room, you might not have the ability to put chairs in front of it. It also means, as well, if it's on the ground, it's going to be right in the midst of all the craziness, all the people walking around. They could bump into it. They could, unplug it. They could plug their own phone into it and play cat videos if they wanted to. It's kind of exposed to everyone as well, and it's out in the audience. So be careful that when you are deciding where this goes, that you have a clear line of sight to the projection screen. A good rule of thumb is just to clear out the space between the screen and the projector and kind of make a nice little box. Obviously it's a little bit of a triangle, but you want to give a little bit of space around the projector as well so no one bumps into it. However, it also kind of saves you some space as well. So while it can be blocked, you can technically push those screens now all the way to the back wall and then that way fill in chairs as close as possible. Whereas when we get to rear projection, because the screen has to be further out and behind it, it means that you might lose a little bit of floor space. It means you might have to cut some chairs, all that sort of stuff. So keep that in mind as you're deciding your layout. And we're going to get to a little bit of a secret, which is right behind my head, a little bit of how to understand this a little bit better. So we're talking about where it has to be. You want to make sure that you're getting a nice clean shot of it. Obviously, if you're looking to avoid people's shadows of their heads walking in front of it, or chairs being in the way, you can always mount the screen up in the ceiling doing rigging. But again, that introduces additional costs. That's up to you as the planner. So that's front projection in a gist. Let's look at rear projection. Obviously, the opposite of front projection, we're actually projecting from the back of, behind the screen. Usually we call it the back of house. What's great about projecting from behind is that it creates this little bit of a backstage area. This is sometimes really important, and again, how front projection can bring down a downside is that sometimes an AV company needs that backstage area. Maybe to prep speakers. It could be where the video guys are staying, controlling everything. It also could be an area where they need to store all the empty cases as well. So having rear projection allows you to be able to create that backstage area and might be necessary. So if you're, for example, doing front projection and pushing all against the wall, it's important to ask, well, where are we going to store all the empty cases as well? So, and again, like we said, it's projecting through a translucent surface, which I don't have on here, which slightly dims the screen, but it basically will come through the screen and then boom, the audience can look at it and it looks really, really good. Hopefully, again, hopefully you have a great projector as well. It's all dependent on that. So again, rear projection. What's great about this is, whereas in front projection, if you want to get it where, it's above and clearing people's heads and everything like that, you have to rig it. And if it's on the ground, you're going to run into some issues. With rear projection, the AV company doesn't have to rig the projector. As long as you're not putting your screen like massively high, like 500 feet in the air or something like that, you can actually put all the stack some cases on top of each other, do a simple ground supported truss system, sometimes even just put it on top of an AV cart, and it allows you to put that screen behind there as well, but you don't have to worry about people walking in front of it, tripping on cables, plugging in, playing their cat videos, all that sort of stuff. So again, kind of creates a nicer look. In my opinion, I believe this is a cleaner look to an event as well. Whenever you can, I always prefer rear projection. The reason why, again, you get that backstage space. I think it looks a lot cleaner. It allows people to walk in front of the projection screens. And as long as you're using a good enough projector, it shouldn't worry about dimming the screen as much, but we do want to make sure that you know that it does slightly dim the screen, and that you do want to make sure that you're going to need a slightly brighter projector technically. So yeah, when it comes to all this sort of stuff, you might be thinking, okay, well, how do I determine how much space I need? That's usually the next question. How much space do you need to project? So obviously, front or rear projection, the size doesn't matter. It's the exact same. The question becomes, when you are doing it, you want to make sure that you are choosing the type of lensing to do this. And the way that you do this is understanding throw distance. And that's where this secret is, in the throw distance. Throw distance is the space between your projector and your screen. Throw distance, again, your distance between your screen and your projector. This is all calculated based on what type of lens you're using, what type of projector, all these things like that. Your AV company should be able to tell you this number pretty quickly. If you are looking for a good tool, we'll link it down below from Projector Central. They actually have a quick tool where you can plug in the model of projector and then say what size screen it is, and it'll tell you how much distance you need. But the important thing to know is that no matter front or rear, it's going to always be the same. They do make what's called short throw lenses. This means exactly what you mean. It takes a longer throw and makes it shorter. So especially when doing rear projection, we end up doing short throw lenses for it. However, sometimes when you're doing front projection, if the room's small enough, we might use a long throw lens so we can put the projector in the back of the room so we can avoid it being too close and cutting seats and things like that. This is all possible with the AV company, but the thing to keep in mind is, again, just always knowing what the distance is and planning. I recommend planning for rear projection to have that space. Again, because it creates backstage space, all the benefits that I kind of talked about a little bit earlier. So calculate what your throw distance space is, and then I highly recommend is add a little bit of padding as well. And what I mean by padding is, if, for example, you need 15 feet to throw the projector, that's usually from the front of the projector to the screen itself. That doesn't include the back of the projector. If you want people to be able to walk behind that projector, if, for example, you need additional space to run around, whatever you want to do, always include a little bit extra space. So for example, if your AV company is requesting 15 feet, it might be wise to at least add 3 or 4 extra feet. Reason why I recommend it is just so people can walk behind it. Because especially if your projector is going to be a little bit lower, you want the ability for someone to walk behind it versus in front of it, again, avoiding casting shadows like you do with front projection, even in rear. So, woo, what a mouthful full of projection screens. You know, this fight has kind of come to an end, but only you can decide who the winner is, whether it's front or rear. You'll have to do that yourself, but I hope this was really, really helpful. This is Whiteboard Wednesday. If you have any other examples of what you think when you're choosing front or rear projection, leave them down in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. If you have any crazy horror stories from someone was making shadow puppets up on the screen or something like that, we would love to hear it as well. So leave us a comment down below, and also if you love Whiteboard Wednesday and this was super helpful, click that subscribe button. Ding that little bell so you get notified every Wednesday when we post new content. But I'm Will Curran from Endless Events, and we're going to get out of here, and we'll see you next Wednesday on Whiteboard Wednesday.